Absolutely. So what questions do you have about becoming an entrepreneur?
Okay, I'll start from motivation tips for productivity.
Motivation's an interesting thing. I think, and I'll let Eva answer this as well, but for me, we grew up in a very small farming town in southeast Arkansas. And I know that I grew up reading a lot of science fiction, and I wanted to see the world and go and do things. And, our family had always owned a farm and ran a farm. So being an entrepreneur seemed normal. Like I always expected to work for myself. I just wanted to do something more interesting. I always tell people there was no cotton 2.0. There was just cotton. And so, it wasn't like it changed every year. There was something new about it. So a lot of it was just, wanting to do something different. Eva?
Yeah, I think that just having this longing in my heart for something more than what I could see was the first motivation. And then if I think about, how do I structure my motivation so I stay motivated? I think there's two pieces to it for me. One is making sure that my why is big enough. Like, so I have a really big why it's important to me, why I'm doing it. And then the second piece is making sure that along the way I look and I see that I have a trajectory. Otherwise, I feel sometimes where I'm going feels so far away that if I don't also check in and acknowledge my own progress, then it can be easy to feel less motivated. But how old are you?
I'm 15, I'll be turning 16 in December.
Okay, so you're 15, turning 16, and you reached out to Will over LinkedIn. Now we're connected. So I want to ask you, what do you know about motivation right now? What can you teach us?
Okay, I think what motivates me is I look at the end goal out of everything. Yeah, that's my main motivation and where I want to go. Yeah, that's what motivates me.
And a big part for me was just I wanted financial freedom. I mean, we grew up, farming was not doing well. Our dad was stressed, our mother was stressed because money was tight. And so I looked at it as a way to get and be able to do the things I wanted to do in my life.
That's also something that motivates me. Okay, so under motivation, I have some sub questions.
Okay.
Let me ask those. Okay, so how do you stay positive and keep moving when nothing seems to be working?
That's a great question. Because that's most of being an entrepreneur is it seems like nothing happens, or even worse, bad things happen. And what I found was that our business didn't work, when we were doing the dating site, and Eva helped me build that. And then she went on and started her own company that was successful, is there were long stretches where all you receive are negative feedback. And it's really discouraging. I mean, I came within a week of quitting the dating site before we started getting positive results after 18 months. And that is the hardest part of this whole thing is maintaining your belief that it's possible without being too unrealistic. You don't want to do things that are going to bankrupt you or hurt your family, but you have to keep the forward momentum. So some of it is putting yourself in a situation in life to where failure doesn't take you out of the game. So, I kept my day job while I was working on the dating site until it actually started working and we started making money. But it's really hard. I mean, I'll let Eva speak to it because she went through a lot longer period than even I did.
What I know now is that it's important for every step to be really clear. It may succeed, it may fail, but to have at least learning built in. So even if there's no forward movement on the business, there's knowledge growth, which then can fuel additional risks and stuff. And I'm with Will. Like if you can make the risk less epic, then there's less pressure. And so less pressure, it's easier to breathe. If it's easier to breathe, then it's easier to remember the why and to find new possibilities.
I mean, Thomas Edison's a great example when he was working on the light bulb. I mean, he worked
Yeah.
for years and years, and all he had was a list of things that didn't work. And he was okay with that. Like, he's like, I know all the things that won't work. At some point, we will find that thing that will work. But boy, it's hard to remember that while you're going through it.
For me, what motivates me to keep working on something is, like I tell my friends, let's work on this. It doesn't matter whether we fail, because we're going to learn from our failures. Because we're still young. The more we fail, we learn quick. We keep learning.
Do you have any?
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite surprise learnings that happened that way?
I think I tried like making 3 apps. I didn't know how ads work. By failing, I learned how ads work. Tried websites. Failing, I've learned how most of the things work.
I think, Emmanuel, you're onto something at a point in your life where it's just incredible to me. If
Oh yeah.
every failure brings you learning, that's awesome.
And as long as you're not taking a huge financial risk to learn, then you can keep learning. And at some point that stacks and it leads to success.
Failure is part of the process with entrepreneurship. How did you learn to overcome setbacks?
A big example for me personally was watching our father, who, when his father died, he was in, it put him in massive debt, and he just never gave up. I mean, he would just put one foot in front of the other, with no forward progress for many, many years until things started turning around. And I just took that to heart and learned to dig in deep and really push myself on things. And also, I just felt that as long as I didn't do anything that endangered, my family or put anyone else at risk, all that, like, I can work a 9-to-5 job. That's the time that I put in to feed myself, to not have to ask others for resources. And then every other spare moment in my day is something that I can work on getting better at being an entrepreneur or trying that new idea. And I just felt that if I did that, eventually, someday, I would find a breakthrough. And it happened earlier for me than I expected, but it happened. And I know Eva had similar track of, like, they tried, and then all of a sudden it starts working.
The biggest skill that I developed over Critical Watch was getting back up. And when things got really, really hard, and we would look around and not really know how we were going to make it, I could come back to thinking, well, I do know how to get back up. If I don't know anything else, I know how to get back up. And so it was this resilience that we built about getting back up every time that we felt like we'd been knocked down. And so it seems like a simple answer, but it's this resilience piece is super important. Another thing I think is really important is to also make sure to take care of yourself and make sure that you're sleeping enough, you're getting the right food, you're exercising. If the body and mind aren't at a place of resourcefulness, then everything seems bigger than it is. And so those were, at a really basic level, really important.
Because it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. I mean, you can sprint for a year maybe, but when you start building a business that takes 5 years, I hit the wall at about 2 years where I just couldn't work any harder. I couldn't row any harder. So then it became a matter of, how do we get better at this? Because we can't exert any more effort than we're exerting, So I got to start taking care of myself and start, like, treating this like it's a long-term activity.
Mm-hmm.
How about you?
So how I learned to overcome setbacks is I really just take a break from everything. Maybe I get relax, watch some movies. Then, for example, I'm creating an app, or I'm writing code. I'll then get my notebook. So I write down some sketches of the code. Then I start imagining how I would implement that. Then I implement that.
I think that's a great technique. Well, I'm going to go back to Edison. So Thomas Edison invented so many things. I think it was him that did this. So he used to, when he would get overwhelmed, he used to take a nap. But he would take a nap and he would have this really heavy ball in his hand, and he'd be sitting down. So he had his nap chair. he would sit in his nap chair and hold this heavy ball in his hand. And under the chair was this big metal plate. And right as he dozed off, the ball would fall and make this huge sound. And he would then scribble down his dreams, like to get inspiration.
I haven't done that yet, but I would wake up in the middle of the night with an answer to coding problems, jump out of my bed and drive over to One and Only and start coding.
Yeah, me too. Oh, at what age did you start your face business?
For me, it was in college. I tried to do advertising in the bathrooms around the college town. I made enough money to buy the printer back, but that was it. So it wasn't very successful. But, you know, I think we were always, I tried to grow watermelons and pumpkins back when I was a kid. I think Eva had reminded me of that.
This is why I'm laughing. Yeah, you were, let's see, I was probably 8. So you were maybe 10 or 12, and maybe I was 10.
It was a great idea until all the bugs showed up and ate them all. But, you know, it could have worked. It could have worked. What about you, Eva?
So I had kind of a pseudo long cutting business when I was a kid. It was great because I cut like 5 or 6 different yards, made money to buy all the books that I wanted, and I read a lot. But in college, I started a painting business. Mm-hmm. So I painted dorms, I painted offices, I painted houses as a way of paying my way through college and not taking on too much debt.
Will, at what age did you first succeed with your first succeed with the company?
So we sold One and Only, which basically became Match because they had failed and we absorbed their business. Right, I think 3 months past my 30th birthday. So my big goal was I wanted to make $1 million by the time I was 30. So I was late 3 months, but we overshot the target pretty good. So yeah, that was the first, you know, quote, confirmed success in the bag. Had a lot of failures even since then. I mean, I've tried a lot of things that don't work. I've had a few more successes, but you know, it's hard. I mean, you know, starting things is not easy even after you've succeeded.
Yeah, my first. So I'm 2 years younger than Will. So I was 28 when we sold One and Only, and I was one of the founding members. So I count that as a success.
Yep.
The next one, Critical Watch, which was an internet security company. I started with our younger brother Nelson, and that one took 15 years.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it was definitely a marathon.
So how do you guys do what you do?
Well, a lot of it is we were willing to learn the skills necessary to operate the businesses. So, you know, we've got this theory that we're working on now, which is, you know, there's 3 main skills that you need to do almost any business now, because every business involves technology of some kind.
Yeah.
You've got to have design, engineering, and sales and marketing. When I started out, I don't think I had any of those skills. I couldn't program. I had never sold anything, and I certainly never thought of myself as a designer. So the first thing we had to do was learn how to program it. Then we had to learn how to sell it. And I was fortunate enough that those 2 were enough to start hiring the design help that I needed, which was Kevin and Patrick really came on board and helped us with that. But a lot of it was just our willingness to learn, to acquire the skills so that we could do stuff until the business got big enough that we could hire people that were better than us at it.
Yeah, I second all of that. And I think we also have in common a belief that if we can look and see that somebody else has done it, that means that it's possible. And so we can do it. It's just a matter of, you know, what are the skill set gaps between here and there, and then learning them good enough, not perfect, but good enough to get to the next step.
And so part of what you'll face is if you like the programming, like I love the programming, it will never be enough. You're going to have to learn some design, and then you're going to have to learn how to sell whatever it is you're building to put it into the success category.
So Emmanuel, if you look at your skill set, where are you strongest?
Okay, so I think it's programming, but I've been doing my research on startups and entrepreneurship and marketing and design too. So I've been trying to just learn everything. And
the marketing is very learnable for an engineer, especially if you approach it as as a numbers game.
Speaking of learning, how do you most effectively learn new things?
So for me, I'm a giant flashcard believer. I've even got some right here that I'm working on today. And what I'll do is I'll get a book or a video course because they're both really cheap. And I will just try to go, I'll have a goal in mind. Here's what I want to do with it. I'm trying to build this or I want to do that. And then I go through it and I mark every piece of information that I need in order to be able to accomplish that goal. And I put it on a flashcard and I memorize it. So when I taught myself programming, it was like, 100 flashcards for HTML, 300 for the programming language or whatever. So I broke it down into individual facts and then just would learn 20 or 30 or 40 a day until I could do it. Like right now I'm doing that with Adobe Premiere Pro. I'm trying to learn how to edit these videos that we're making. So I'm just, methodically breaking down because I feel like any task like that is a pretty finite number of things you have to actually master.
The way I learn best is coming up with something I want to do and then figuring out what it is that I need to learn in order to do it. I'll look at books, videos, or YouTube. YouTube's incredible. There's all kinds of courses that are out there there's free courses. There's some that are like $10. You get a lot of bang for your buck. That's how you learn Flutter.
Yes.
And when I need to deep dive on something, for example, database work, when I was first learning how to do SQL queries and things like that, it was a ton of books. And I would buy a book that was just above my current level and go through all the exercises, make sure I really understood how it worked, and then buy the book at the next level so that I was stepping up a ladder of learning rather than trying to get the best and then try to understand the expert concepts when I was still a novice. Doesn't work for me. But getting here's what I want to do and just grabbing the knowledge pieces and then experimenting, failing, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work.
How are you currently doing it, Emmanuel?
So how I do it is I'm a fan of watching programming videos, tutorials mainly. So what I do is I go through the tutorial, I complete it. Then after that, let's say I was building a project in that tutorial, I delete the whole project that I built from the tutorial. Then I try rebuild it again myself without having to go through the tutorial.
That's when you know if you know it, right? Is when you have to do it from scratch. Now, is your path over there to go to college or do you want to strike out starting a business?
Okay, for me, I feel if I start out really early, starting a business, even if I fail as many times as I will fail, eventually I'll get there. And obviously, there's always going to be time to go to college or school. Yeah, that's what I think.
I mean, the one good thing about programming is that you don't have to go to college to get paid well to do it.
Okay, so how do you guys suggest that I measure my progress?
Well, where are you going? You know what you're aiming for.
Yeah, what's your goal, your ultimate goal? Is it a certain amount of money? Is it a certain type of company? Like, what do you want out of the journey?
Okay, so I think it's mainly financial freedom and just to see myself come from, let's say, really small or nothing and to really something big, and that shows me that I've succeeded.
So then it's probably measured in how much your net worth increases over a given amount of time. I'm an industrial engineer, and so everything's always efficiency.
Yeah.
And so you have to create an efficient vehicle that starts to let your assets build up, your net worth build up, your cash flow build up. And so if that's your goal, I would start measuring myself by, can I come up with projects that put money in the bank? And I'll give you a good example. I ran into a guy in San Francisco that was running marketing for Udemy, Udemy.
Yeah.
Online courses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him, well, what is the most successful teacher on your platform and how much money do they make? And so he said, well, it's a former high school teacher. He taught himself to program, and he's got 3 courses on Udemy. How much money, Emmanuel, do you think he made in 2017?
Okay, so how much were the courses?
The average course on Udemy always sells for $10 because they always put it on sale. So the
Yeah,
instructor is going to make $5 a course. Okay. I know that because I've got a course up there.
I think maybe 100,000 to maybe $500,000.
Made $5 million personally,
Wow. Oh,
which is, if he does that many more years, he will have done better
yeah,
than I did off of Match.com. And
yeah,
so, okay, so I heard that and I went, oh man, that bothers me. Like I can't not do something about that. So I went home to my son, my youngest son, and I said, they give you analytics. I said, get on there, find a course that you think your father could do, and we're going to make a course. I'll split it with you. We put up a database course, and it brought in $14,000 last year, and I spend maybe 4 minutes a week on it.
wow.
But and
Yeah,
so, for him, that's like really big money. I mean, he's like the richest kid in his class
yeah.
because he's got a really good income. So
How long did it take you to build it, Will?
about 6 weeks. So, but I already knew how to do the databases. Now I had to learn this particular database, so there was some extra work involved. But
Mm-hmm.
I guess what I'm saying is that you can find platforms that do the marketing for you, or you really get good at marketing a certain kind of app, and that can generate income. So I would measure it in your ability to spot those opportunities and start generating that extra revenue, especially now while you're under your parents' roof and you've got extra time and you don't have to cover your overhead.
So I measure progress a few ways. I want to make sure that I'm not going backwards. I want to make sure I have enough breathing space so that I have the ability to go forwards, and then I want to just keep improving. So probably the baseline to make sure I'm not slipping backwards. Am I maintaining my financial health, what my financial baseline, my own health, my ability to move? Then I want to make sure that from there I know where I'm going, and I just look for what is the next right step towards it. I make sure I take time every month, every quarter to go back and look and review and reflect. Am I really on the path I say I'm on, or am I deluding myself a little bit? So it's really about for me, the check-in and reflection, so that if I have my goal as my compass, then I can reflect back on the steps I'm taking and how I'm taking them to see if I'm still moving towards it.
And also, at your position, one way to measure it is if you're increasing your technical skills, can you earn more money, even if it's not your business? Is your value in the marketplace going up?
Thanks on that.
What are you working on right now?
I'm working on an app called Sita. I pitched it to Will. So
Okay.
yeah, it's an on-demand child care service that connects babysitters or sitters with parents and families.
What's your vision for this? But really, like, if you look at where you would like to see it in a year, what would it look like?
Okay, I think in a year, maybe having at least a few users, maybe 50 to 100, at least pass the MVP stage or get the idea validated. Yeah.
Well, the good news with that goal, you're just talking about helping babysitters in one neighborhood, and that's very achievable, right? I mean, if you just picked a small enough geography, you could create a marketplace within that geography with your resources.
Yes, that's what I'm focusing on. Yeah.
That's a great way to think about it.
No.
Mm-hmm.
What platform are you building it on? How are you going to implement it technically?
Okay, so I'm building it, like where I'm building it from, I'm using Windows PC, and I'll be using Flutter to ship it out to iOS and Android. Yeah.
My guess is that Emmanuel's probably better at Flutter than I am at this point.
I've done a lot of Flutter tutorials. Yeah, I even took a Udemy course on Flutter. Okay, so where do you see my strengths and what should I focus on improving?
Well, I mean, your strengths are you're challenging yourself to build things already, and you're learning and you're going through that learning process. It's probably my hallucination, because I never know when I'm giving advice. I don't always have all the tactical information, but it's picking the right target for you personally, so that it's something that is achievable with your resources, the right kind of business to start that gives you the most increase in your net worth. And it's hard. Like, I do this wrong all the time. It's a really difficult skill, but that's usually where the magic happens, because if you pick the right target, what you're doing now will work.
Thanks on that.
Yeah. So what I've heard you say so far is that you're really good at learning, and you have a broad expanse of what you're learning. You're learning technical and design and business. So all of that to me is really solid and good. The place that I haven't heard as much about is sales and marketing. And so just based on the gap in our conversation, I would be curious about what development you can do there. And there's a book that Will inspired me to buy earlier this year called The Right It, that I think might be really fascinating to you as an engineer, as somebody who thinks from a programming lens. It has a framework for, how do you think about testing ideas from a engineering/sales point of view.
Okay, thanks.
And the gist of the book is finding the right idea for you. And because working on the wrong idea, there's nothing more miserable in the world, because we've both done it.
What's the name of the book again?
The Right It.
And again, you actually might be the best salesman in the world, and it's just that because it wasn't in the conversation, I'm like, well, maybe that's the growth area.
Okay, so how do I communicate my ideas of business more clearly?
So you have to, it's a combination of branding and storytelling. And it's something that you can definitely get better at. And so, like, for me, the first time I really worked on it is I watched 5 years of TechCrunch pitches on YouTube, and just took a lot of notes about who did a better job. I mean, these were all vetted pitches, but some of them were much better than the others. And then there's books like Nancy Duarte has a couple of books on doing pitch decks. It is a learned skill, but a lot of it's storytelling, like taking people through a journey, an investor through a journey that lets them know that you are going to help them make more money. But honestly, my biggest recommendation, because Eve and I both grew up and then worked in areas where it was very difficult to raise money. The best way to raise money is to build a business that makes money, and then people will want to give it to you.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at, he referenced Nancy Duarte, and she has a book called Slideology and a book called Resonate that are really good about storytelling.
And we'll put it in the show notes at the bottom. We'll add links to all this. But
thanks.
And so a pitch deck, whether you're pitching investors or you're pitching potential customers or you're pitching potential vendors, it's all really about telling the story from their point of view. And one of the challenges that I had as a technical founder is that I wanted to talk about how cool what we were building was, and what was more important to the people who were listening was what difference it made for them. I think, Will, that's probably a lot of what you got out of the TechCrunch videos.
Well, and also telling a story arc, because we're human beings. We want to hear a story, and then we rationalize why we do what we do. And so the best way to get people involved is to have something that they already believe, and then take them on a journey to where your vision ends. And I help founders with that all the time, because they'll have the deck. It's actually, each slide looks good. All the information's in there, but it doesn't tell a story, and so it's just not interesting.
2 more questions. So if you are in my position where I'm trying to build a startup with no money at a young age, what would you recommend I do first, and why?
So you're already doing one thing, which is you're teaching yourself the technical skills, because you're not going to be able to hire someone else to build a product. You're going to have to build it yourself. The second is I would look for platforms where they already have an audience for whatever it is you're building, and you just have to build a product that that audience would like the Udemy course. You know, it was
Yeah.
I could find the demand on the system. I could know that I could meet the demand, and then I had all the tools, the camera, all the software to make it, and they would supply the demand for it. I mean, you got platforms like Etsy's or eBay or Amazon. So all these guys have already aggregated customers. And if you built, I mean, Apple, initially the App Store was a great example of this because there were so few apps and Apple supplied all the customers. Now it's really hard because there's too many apps and you almost have to do your own marketing. But if you came up with an app that Apple really, really liked and they put it on the front page, then they would be doing the marketing for you. So you'd have to engineer something that they cared about that they would put on the front part. I mean, I met some entrepreneurs that were doing that because they would always incorporate the new iPhone features into their app, and then Apple would showcase their app because it showed off the stuff they wanted everyone else to do. So, but it's thinking about it as, I'm not going to have the marketing money that people that get funding are going to have when I start out. So where do I put a product out that the demand is already there and I'm supplying a superior product?
And then for me, let's say it's the sitter app or whatever app it is that you decide to build. One of the first steps I think is important is to go out and to talk to the people who need it. So for example, the families who need a sitter. And then I would bring like some paper where if the app did this and you click this button and then it went here, and ask them what features would they fall in love with, or which ones, where's their biggest pain, so that, and like if it just had this one button, would it be good enough? Like, I need a sitter. Is that enough?
Yeah. Will told me I can start building the platform on Instagram, then trying to communicate with people.
Great. Yeah. So you've already gone through multiple. How are you learning from the people that?
Yeah. So like this guy they contacted yesterday. I haven't talked to them much, but yeah, I just told them I'm building a seater service platform. So, and they're like, what does it do? And I just told them it was Uber for babysitters. So yeah, yes. Then they haven't yet gotten back to me, but I asked questions like what main features are the things they're using? Like what features are the things they're using don't have?
Are you talking to the families that need sitters?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think sitters are probably easier. They just need jobs.
Yeah. I think it's the last question. So how did you guys convert users, clients to access to Match.com?
Well, so the answer to this question would change over time, right? So when we first started, AOL was dominating the tech scene. Everyone was using that as the main platform, and then they would get onto the internet from AOL. And we looked at what users were doing on AOL. They were in chat rooms and they were trying to get a date or trying to impress a girl. And so we moved off of AOL and we advertised in every chat room that wasn't on AOL, assuming that the behavior would be the same. But that answer wouldn't work today. But what I can say that's important about it is go where the users are, because that's the only way you're going to track them. So if all the babysitters are on Instagram, then you're going to have to be on Instagram. Or if all the, you have to go where the users are in the beginning to pull them in. Now that's a consumer app. Now for Eva, it was completely different because she was doing B2B. I mean, what worked for you guys, Eva?
We went to conferences where the topic was in line with what we were selling, because then we knew that the companies were there, had an interest in security, and that they wanted to learn, and they also wanted to shop vendors. So it's same thing in a lot of ways. Go to where they're aggregating. Oh, and journals. Like we also wrote a bunch of articles. So that's another area. If you can provide articles or information of value, like how to find a good babysitter safely. How do you find a backup babysitter? Like just articles that are on topic for what it is that you're offering that provides value, neutral value to the end user.
Yeah.
I mean, like in the US right now, next door is kind of where neighborhoods chatter and talk and ask each other for recommendations for different products and services. So, I mean, that might be a place where people are looking for babysitters. But, that article could be photographs if it's Instagram, or it could be videos if you're doing YouTube. So again, it's producing content in the right medium to attract your users. I mean, Gary Vee really emphasized that around like how he got his family's wine store business up was he created a ton of YouTube videos that attracted people that began then ordering wine from this family's wine store. So you can use content that you create with your sweat to attract those users that then become customers.
Yeah, and also that this is great. The first customers, the app doesn't have to be built. There just needs to be a button that then starts whatever needs to happen in the background, and then they get whatever they were promised. So when we first started scanning, they would press a button. Nelson was actually trying to test their site, and then we would find everything, and then we would write up the report and would give them the report. And then after we had enough people saying, oh yeah, we do want this, then we automated it.
Let's say you get past the MVP stage and you validate your idea. So you build it out with no money. So what's the next step? How do you scale?
So this is where you really have to be honest about your ability to get resources. The way we did it was we knew we were never going to get venture capital investing in Dallas. So we focused on creating a profitable business and then grew it with the profits. And we outlasted Match, who raised $10 million, spent it all, couldn't raise the next round, and then they were sold off. And so knowing what we knew is we focused on unit profitability and then just grew it from that. Given that you're in Africa, there's probably not much venture capital at your local level.
There is no, there is.
Yeah, there's just not, right? And so, that's where you have to be intelligent and pick a target that you can start and get to scale without outside money, because it's highly improbable that you will get it. I mean, you might, but I wouldn't bet that way.
As you're growing, it's important to have an overview of the whole funnel. Like as customers come in, as they get onboarded, as they get services provided for them. If it's a two-place marketplace, that you'll have two funnels coming in, and so it's important to know where the bottleneck is, like where the real bottleneck is, so that you can work on that rather than working on the part of the funnel that feels really good to work on. Sometimes it's can we find enough people who want what I'm offering, and then that's the place to fix, to focus on, and to get that solved. Once you find them, the next bottleneck may be, how do we find them at a better price? And so then you focus on, making it cheaper to advertise, so that when they come in, you begin to make money for everyone that comes in. It may be now there's not enough product to give them. There's not enough babysitters. So then you would go solve the babysitter problem.
Yeah.
But it's a learning process, and it's not easy, or everyone would have their own business, but it's doable. Well, look, Emmanuel, thank you so much for reaching out to us. And as you continue your journey, feel free to reach out. We want you to be successful. So many people helped us along the way, and we want to return the favor.
Thanks.
It is super, super exciting to talk to you. It's also really inspiring to see somebody like so young, like your head is completely on your shoulders. That means that, you're rock solid, where you're going, and you have a really clear idea of the things that you need to learn to get there. And that's just, to me, really inspiring. And would you come back as you do more, like development, whether it's on the app or it's on sales, and show us what you've learned. Like
Yeah,
what
sure,
problem,
sure.
what problems you've solved and how you solved them. That would be really exciting. I think not only for us, but for everybody else that's trying to do the same thing.